and welcome to the Great American Mail for June the 6th, 2022. It is a beautiful sunny day in Atlanta, and we have got a lot of things to talk about to bring you up on the news. We have a lot of January 6th news. We're going to cover the Navarro arrest and some ways that Democrats are trying to, once again, rig the 2022 November election. You're going to want to stick around for that one. So let's start off the show here and talk about one of the biggest stories that's going on. And this is a very, very slow news day, folks. Not a lot going on. And I believe a lot of the reason that a lot is not going on is because of the fact that the Democrats are preparing for the January 6th committee to go forward, and they are going to go forward on Thursday. We will be live streaming it Thursday, 8 o'clock. And so, of course, right on cue, the committee came out, and there's a couple of Axios' stories we're going to start off the show with. So the first Axios, and if you're tuning in on YouTube, you can see this live. I've got it pulled up for us here. Scoop, January 6th Committee's secret advisor. You scroll down a little bit, and you see the House January 6th Committee has turned to a renowned former network news executive to hone a mountain of explosive evidence into a captivating multimedia presentation for a prime time hearing on Thursday. James Goldston, former president of ABC News and a master documentary storyteller who ran Good Morning America and Nightline, has joined the committee as an unannounced advisor, Axios has learned. Now, there's a lot of things that are going on here. The first and foremost thing that's going on is you got to understand the January 6th committee has been operating in secrecy since almost about a year ago. I think it started on either June 1st or July 1st of 2021. They have no one that has been appointed by the leader of the minority party. It is essentially judge, jury, and executioner, right? Now imagine that. So you get almost a year to collect evidence in secret. Nobody gets to see it unless they leaked it, which they've illegally leaked a lot of it. But they basically been conducting this in secret for all this time. They're going to have a live hearing. They're going to do it in prime time starting this Thursday. Again, we'll live stream it if you want to tune in and see what's going on. And after all of that, right, all those advantages, that's not good enough for them. They've got to go out and hire somebody who used to run Good Morning America and Nightline. Now, again, think about that. Among the other problems with that is politics is supposed to be something that is higher than just TV, right, or manufactured things like television. But you can see right here that this is what the Democrat Party thinks is what politics is. It's all television. It's all a show. You just come on and you produce something and you go after people. It's really just kind of sad. Anyway, the story goes on and it says right here what he plans to do. According to the Axios person who wrote this, I'm told Mr. Goldston is busily producing Thursday 8 p.m. Eastern Time hearing as if it were a blockbuster investigative special. He plans to make it raw enough so that the skeptical journalist will find the material fresh and chew over the disclosure in future coverage. Now, I'm going to go into a little bit of detail here about how whatever it is that they're going to come up with is not going to be fresh. But before I do that, I just can't. Where are the skeptical journalists? Where are these skeptical journalists that Axios seems to think are out there? There are no skeptical journalists out there. They don't exist. That's just complete fabrication. Anyway, so I thought that was a good thing to start off the news of the day with because, again, a lot of what's going on now is basically old news that we talked about in terms of the January 6th committee and Peter Navarro, which we're going to get to in a moment. But before we do that, and on our Substack page, if you go up there, GreatAmericanMail.substack.com, we've got several articles on January 6th, but I need to remind you what January 6th is. January 6th is not simply the Capitol rally that got a little bit under control. It's also the fact that Donald Trump was planning to challenge the certification of Joe Biden on January 6th. That's what these people seem to think is going to be so explosive. Now, it's not going to be explosive because we've gone on it before. There's nothing that Trump did that was in any way, shape, form, or fashion illegal. But the January 6th committee is going to try to repackage and rehash it. And I guess with this quote-unquote expert, God only knows what we're paying for this, but with this expert, they're going to try to make it more interesting. But this wasn't the only story that came out of the January 6th thing. But before we do that, let's jump into a little bit of Peter Navarro, because I want you to hear, Peter Navarro, as you know, was arrested on Thursday for failing to comply with a January 6th subpoena. He was basically apparently handcuffed, arrested by the FBI on a trip. He was flying to Nashville to go appear on Huckabee's program, and the FBI decided to arrest him at the airport. Obviously meant to embarrass him, obviously meant to harass him. They took him into court, and I'll let him tell you in his own words what went on. But here's Peter Navarro after he appeared and posted bail in D.C. Here's him talking to reporters. Take a listen.
Contact an individual who would discuss this matter. What did they do? They didn't call me. I spoke to the FBI agent who'd arrested me. I spoke to him Wednesday night. I said, Walter, whatever you need.
Knows
you
his
don't
first
have to
name.
come banging on my door like you did last week getting me out of bed. I'm here to cooperate. Okay? What did they do? Right? I was on my way to Nashville today to do a TV appearance with Mike Huckabee's show. Right? And instead of coming to my door where I live, which, by the way, is right next to the FBI, instead of calling me and say, hey, we need you down at court, we've got a warrant for you, I would have gladly come. What did they do? They intercepted me getting on the plane. And then they put me in handcuffs, they bring me here, they put me in leg irons, they stick me in a cell. By the way, just historical note, I was in John Hinckley's cell. They seem to think that was like an important historical.
Hinckley being the guy that shot Reagan.
That's punitive. What they did to me today violated the Constitution.
Okay, he's going to go into a bunch of constitutional stuff, and we don't need to hear any more of that. I mean, he's correct about the constitutional stuff, by the way. And if you go up to the YouTube channel, I think the video before this one is a video about the unconstitutional January 6th committee. You can do that if you wish. But what's going on here, again, is just the type of sort of a political intimidation and fascism that we've been talking about for a while. And that F word is not too strong. There is no reason. This guy is 72 years old, okay? He's on a plane. You know where he's going. He's not hiding. You could have arrested him, or you could have, like he said, you could have asked him to come in peacefully, right? And then if he didn't, then you could go hunt him down and arrest him. The idea that he's going to be hard to find, I mean, this guy has schedules. He was scheduled to be on Huckabee. I guarantee, I haven't done it, but I guarantee if you go online, you can find out his schedule for the next 2 or 3 weeks. You could have picked him up at any one of those times if he truly was trying to evade you, okay? But just to go to show you how nefarious this is, let's go over to MSNBC, our friends over here, and this is going to be Ari Melber is going to try and explain why the FBI felt, A, the need to arrest this man who would have appeared voluntarily, B, to do it in public. You could wait until he did the Huckabee, and then you could, out of the public view when he's going to his car or whatever, arrest him then if you wanted to. No. You do it in public in an airport so that everybody can see it, right? Then you just heard him. He got to court, and they put leg shackles on him. On a 72-year-old man. I mean, look at him. He looks like he's pretty healthy. But there's no reason to put shackles on a 72-year-old man. So NBC, of course, before I play this, I want you to be aware of this. NBC is going to admit in this little bit that I'm going to play that that literally this all happened within the last 24 hours. Riddle me this, Batman. How does NBC have access to, or MSNBC, which is part of NBC, by the way, they're all the same thing. And again, just so you know, everybody knows this. The intelligence agencies, where with the Alphabet network they have the biggest and best relationship with, is the NBC affiliates. That's who they feed their stuff to, and vice versa, okay? So once you listen to Melbourne, Ari here, try to explain why this man needs to be shackled. Take a listen.
And arrested at the airport, he said, at the, quote, door of the airplane. He discussed the way he was put in handcuffs and leg irons. That's what happens when you are arrested in this matter, if you defy a lawful subpoena to this. Okay,
now that's a lie. I'm just going to stop him right there. That's an outright lie. Not everyone... I don't know how long I'm going to play this bit, but if I played it long enough, you'd hear that Steve Bannon wasn't arrested, right? I mean, Michael Sussman wasn't arrested. It's just an outright lie. If you defy a subpoena, there are different ways, and I'm not saying you won't be arrested, but there's lots of different ways to handle it. And again, what he just said, he even knew the FBI agent by name, said he called him. He's not trying to evade. He's just lying there. Anyway, he continues.
Agree? We actually have more on that aspect later in the program, but I want to give you all the big news first. The DOJ filed this indictment under seal yesterday. Indeed, that was right before he appeared on the beat.
And again, just to stop him here, yesterday. And here it is. They filed it yesterday under seal. How does NBC know about it if it's under seal, folks? It's called a felony. It's called a felony. Whoever filed it, leaked it to MSNBC. It's a felony. Again, but he has it, so whatever. He has it in 24 hours. He's going to read from it. Here it goes.
Right? And they said that would be done until the government's arrest operation was executed. And that is the most aggressive way to deal with a potential arrest. And the reasoning was approved by a judge who said that basically Navarro's conduct up until now meant that there was reasonable grounds to suspect that he might flee, tamper with witnesses or evidence, that's a new crime if he did it, or destroy evidence, also separately a new crime. So today, beyond Merrick Garland's Justice Department, you also had a judge view that risk as serious. For comparison, that did not happen to Steve Bannon. That did not happen in every arrest in the Mueller probe.
Okay, so again, I say this all the time. Oftentimes, they contradict themselves within a page, within a paragraph, within a sentence. You heard him early on say that's what you do when you defy a subpoena, and then he just gave people who defied the subpoena as well, and they didn't get arrested. Okay, there you go. So he just contradicted himself. Number two, all he's telling us is that a judge, they went to the judge and they said, Judge, here's what we're deciding to do, and the judge deferred to law enforcement. Shocking. A D.C. judge? You telling me a D.C. judge deferred to law enforcement? Wow. I mean, that's incredible. Now, again, riddle me this one here, Ari. Explain to me why when he got to court and he was already handcuffed and you know he had agents around him, explain to me the leg shackles. I'm just curious. 72-year-old man in handcuffs, agents around. I'm sure they're younger than me, probably my size, or I'm 6 foot 230, my size, or bigger. And he's a 72-year-old man and he's in handcuffs and you got to put leg shackles on him. What's the point of that? Is he going to destroy evidence while he's in the courtroom, surrounded by the FBI in handcuffs? Is that what he's going to do? I mean, what is wrong with these people? How are we losing our culture? We're losing it through these clowns like that. It's just a joke. And again, it reminded me, and this is reminiscent, I wrote down the date of this. Let me see, check my notes. And by the way, for those of you who are tuning in, who've been listening to the podcast, this is the first time we've done it live. I'm going to see if I think I can do this. I'm going to see if I can do this. So I'm going to switch back over. This is to just me. Here are the show notes for today. I'm going to see if I can get this to work here. All right, there are the show notes right there. Just that part right there. I didn't count the words today. Sometimes I count the words. It looks off the top of my head like 16 words. That's the entire show there. And then we're going to produce probably right around 40 minutes. Although today I can't promise I'm going to stick to 40 minutes because I'm using different software and I don't have a clock. I don't even know how long I've been going here, folks. But we shall see. Anyway, so this reminded me on January, that I did this part of the thing I wrote down and just showed you on the camera if you wanted to see it. January 25th. Of 2019. Who was the president January 25th, 2019? Well, it was Donald J. Trump. And I'm sure Trump didn't approve of this at all. But a very similar thing happened to Peter Navarro. And again, I want you to understand, I say this all the time on the podcast, now live stream, whatever. I say this all the time. You have to understand where you are and where you're going. Now, we're going in the wrong direction. Because what happened to Peter Navarro, right, on June 3rd, 2022, right, happened very similar to Roger Stone, January 25th, 2019. Right? If anything, it's gotten a little worse, but certainly it's gotten no better. Well, what am I talking about here? Well, this is CNN, who somehow, again, these people think they're so smart. They're not. This is a CNN story about the arrest of Roger Stone. I'm not going to spoil it for you. Just listen. We'll come back and talk about it. Take a listen. And if you're on YouTube, you obviously can watch it too.
6 a.m. when Roger Stone, longtime Trump associate and advisor, was taken into custody by the FBI. There's a moment of audio on here that I want to play for everyone because this is what the first sounds that Roger Stone woke up to this morning was the FBI pounding on his door.
And just, I'm going to stop this right here. Again, this is 6 a.m. You heard her, 6 a.m. How in the world does CNN know about this? How does the CNN know about an FBI raid that's going to occur at 6 a.m.? And again, Roger Stone, I don't recall off the top of my head how old he is, but he's Navarro's age or older, probably older. Him and his wife live in this house on the river, 6 a.m. Again, take a listen.
Shouting this. I want to just play this for a moment.
FBI, open the door.
Now, again, before she comes back on, this is CNN. Imagine she's highlighting this. This is what she wants you to get highlighted. That a 70-year-old plus couple who live alone on the river, are sitting there, and they get woken up at 6 a.m. to loud pounding, and there's about 15 FBI agents in there to go pick up these people. What in the world could possibly be reason for this? And this is when Trump was president, right? And they did this then. They didn't care. Remember, they always say there's nothing about a swamp, there's nothing to that. What do you think there? The story continues.
Point out that when the second time when they say FBI warrant, you'd like to know if that meant search warrant or arrest warrant.
I mean, it's clear there's an arrest warrant because he's been indicted. And the question, I think, is did they serve another warrant, a search warrant at the same time? We'll know that, I think, probably soon enough. If the agents stayed and went into the house and spent time there, the answer will be probably yes. If they all left when they took Stone out, then the answer is probably no.
You also have been pouring through. Hang on one second, David. You've also been pouring through this, and just so people know maybe why the FBI showed up in force, they have high-level obstruction here by Roger Stone. The extent he went to lie and deceive and to dodge and to tamper, according to this indictment,
is extraordinary.
Joining us now is CNN producer David Shortell. He was on.
All right, I may come back to the CNN producer. I may not. I don't know. But again, folks, notice how sort of at the end there they do a half-hearted effort, ham-fisted, of trying to make sense of why they're doing this to people. Now we've seen 3 years later, we see exactly why they're doing it, right? And again, the leg shackling of Navarro really is, you can sit there and argue about the this and the that, and I don't think there's anything to it, and it's not been proven. And by the way, Roger Stone, they never suggested, they've never proved that he destroyed any evidence or anything like that. There was no reason to do that. It's just pure intimidation. And folks, if this were happening in Venezuela, Colombia, some banana republic there, we would all roll our eyes and laugh at it. It's happening in the United States of America up until this day. It's really, really too bad. So anyway, a little bit more January 6th news. So in addition to the fact that they've brought in an additional person to, I still just have to laugh about this, to the skeptical journalist, Material Fresh, is just sort of kind of really nutty. There's another Axios story out there about the January 6th committee from Axios, saying that there's a private divide going on in the committee. Now, wonder what the private divide could be going on the January 6th committees. Well, if you scroll down here, it says the January 6th committee has split behind the scenes over what actions to take after the public hearings. Some members want big changes on voting rights and even to abolish the Electoral College, while others are resisting proposals to overhaul the U.S. election system, Axios has learned. Now, folks, again, we've talked a lot about the January 6th committee. It was created out of whole cloth. It was kind of modeled on the January attacks from 2001, 9/11, right? But it's basically a unique committee in history. We all know what it's designed to do. While the January, the 9/11 attacks had, basically bipartisan support, this committee, while it was based on that model, did not have bipartisan support, at all. It was passed on a party line vote. And we also know that once it was passed, it's supposed to have 13 members. McCarthy put forth at least 5. Nancy vetoed most of those, and then McCarthy pulled all of them. So it has no persons on there appointed by McCarthy. So it has no minority party representation of any kind, right? That makes it unique in history. It's also unique. Well, it wouldn't be unique unless you rule out the impeachment hearings, but it's also unique in that it's behind closed doors. That's, again, something that is astounding to me. We spend all this time and nobody seems to care about that, but that's something that just doesn't happen in the United States of America. Think back to the Watergate hearings. You would come out and people would actually be questioned in front of the public. We all got the information at the same time. Again, think there you had members of both parties prepared to ask questions. Here, you only have persons who are in favor of this, January 6th commission are going to answer questions. It would be like trying somebody where you have a prosecution and then you have no defense, right? There's just no defense presented at all. It's almost like a default situation civilly for a criminal thing, which of course you can't have. Now, besides that, the interesting thing about this Axios quote-unquote scoop is now they're talking about voting rights. So as you scroll down a little bit, it says why it matters. Axios is one of these groups that puts things out there, and it's like behind the scenes, the big picture, why it matters. All it is repackaged leftism. Instead of writing it in a typical story like everybody else, like the Washington Post and New York Times, they just try to make it look different, but it's still the same leftist nonsense. Anyway, why it matters. The televised hearings begin Thursday night. Committee members are in lockstep about capturing America's attention by unfurling a mountain of evidence connecting Donald Trump and those close to him with the attack on the Capitol. But the committee's legacy depends in large part on what reforms it pursues after those hearings to prevent another January 6th from happening, and that's where the United Front breaks down, okay? And again, there is no United Front there. It's all a bunch of people who know that the January 6th committee is just a smear of people they don't like politically. And that, not coincidentally, the two rhinos or Republicans or Republicrats or whatever you want to call them, Adam Kinzinger and Liz Cheney, they both hate the modern Republican Party. In fact, Cheney's trying to run. Right now she's behind in the polls. It doesn't look like she's going to be renominated. And Kinzinger's already said he's going to step down. So they're not Republicans at all. But I want you to bring you down, scroll down here. The biggest part to me about this is that you've got Jamie Raskin is actually talking about abolishing the Electoral College. All right. And the interesting thing about abolishing the Electoral College is that they don't have any authority to do that. It would require a constitutional amendment to do that. But it also tells you a lot about what the January 6th committee is about. And it's about basically abolishing the Constitution, right? I mean, Raskin thinks that the Electoral College ought to be eliminated. He believes in popular vote elections. Well, why does he believe that? Well, because right now, the Democrats not only have an advantage in the Electoral College, but they also have an electoral advantage in raw voting rights. Well, part of the reason they have that is because they have big states with a lot of people in them, like New York and California, that have very, very loose voting laws and allow a lot of people that if you had voting laws that were kept you closer to on election day and people who were here legally, you can run up big advantages. So that's part of the reason that they like to have a national election day where the popular vote is the only thing that matters. Now, this article does go on and talk about the fact that Liz Cheney, well, she's from one of the smallest states, isn't going to like the fact that the Electoral College is eliminated because it takes all of the power away. But again, it shows you just how radical this committee is. They're not just there to look at January 6th. They're there to look at ways that they can weaken the Constitution, and they talk about the Voting Rights Act and some of these other things that aren't about voting rights. They're about voting procedures. So it'll be interesting to see what the January 6th committee comes up with. And again, they're not going to come up with anything. They're basically going to do two things on Thursday. Again, if you want to, you can tune in. We're going to cover it in depth and live stream it. But the first thing they're going to do is they're going to show. They talk in this article that they've got some video that you haven't seen before, and that's interesting because there are the January 6th committee defendants that are up there on trial now. They've been asking for a lot of this video, and they haven't gotten it. And so they've been asking. Part of the reason that the defendants that are trying to defend themselves from these charges haven't gotten that video is they want to preserve it for the quote-unquote January 6th committee. Now imagine that. Americans are trying to defend themselves from charges. They're being denied that right by judges, all because the January 6th committee wants to give you some new, fresh images to try and tie Donald Trump to charges that he caused the rally. Now, they're not going to be able to do that. We've gone over it on the show. You have to be able to meet the standards of Brandenburg versus Ohio, which they can't do, not even close. But anyway, that's one of the things they're going to do. The second thing they're going to do is they're going to go through and discuss in great detail the fact that Donald Trump was trying to challenge Biden's electoral victory. Now, how is he going to do that? Well, we talked a lot about the Electoral Count Act of 1887 and the 12th Amendment. Basically, that certification process is where you can go and you can challenge the electors from various states. Trump and a lot of other people, not just Trump, a lot of other Republicans had alternate electors from these various states, and they were there ready to go through the procedure to, among other things, try to get electors disqualified. And if you got electors disqualified, then nobody would be to 270. If no one's to 270, then the election goes to the House, and Trump in all likelihood would have won, because in the House you vote one state gets one vote. California, even though it has 50 some representatives, they don't have 50 votes. They just get one. And so Republicans control more state delegations, so they would have likely won had it gone there. The other way it could have gone to the House is if in debating the challenges that were going to be done. And remember, they had 8 senators and over 100, I think 125 or so Congress people ready to do those challenges. And if those challenges had gone on a sufficient time that you weren't going to be able to seat a president, then that would have kicked it over to the House as well. So there are lots of ways that they could have done it. And what's going to happen is you're literally going to see a show trial on Thursday night. I don't know if they'll start the show trial part of it or not. They'll probably, my guess is they'll start with the riot. They'll start with that because that if it bleeds, it leads. So they'll probably start with that because they want to show the riot and see some people get injured and whatnot. But sooner or later, they're going to get around, and they're basically going to say, following the Electoral Count Act, right? By following the Electoral Count Act, these people were breaking the law. Okay, and we've gone over this on the show before, but you're going to see a lot of that. So we'll see what happens, but I thought it was interesting that and again, whatever Axios is written here, it's not some scoop. It's something that the January 6th committee gave to them, a puff piece, so they go and write it. So it's leaking to the public and leaking to us that what they want to do here is not just smear Republicans and keep them in the news and try to use it as a weaponization, going after people like Navarro and keeping the issue in the minds of the public, right? But it's also to basically change our voting procedures to things that are more Democrat friendly, right? See that's here from the article, and get rid of the Electoral College, which again would take it This is also just incredible. Since the Electoral College is in the Constitution, the only way to get rid of it is to amend the Constitution. Now, you have to have 2/3, or actually maybe 3/4 of each body. Okay, it's either 2/3 or 3/4. I don't have time to look in the Constitution right now. It's one of the two. Either way, you don't have that at all. Not even close. I mean, the filibuster is only 60. Right? And that's why the Democrats are trying to get rid of the filibuster, because they can't even get to 60. So there's no way they could amend the Constitution. And setting aside the fact that it's got to go and 3/4 of the states have to approve it. But anyway, I digress. They're talking about that. It's just nonsense. I don't even know why they're even talking about it, because it's not something they can do. So anyway, moving on. That took up a lot of the time here. I wanted to cover one other story. You can see here, this is out of the New York Times. And I heard about this story through Mark Elias, who, as you know, I follow on Twitter. So Mark Elias is out there today. North Carolina TV station pulls an attack ad against Sherry Beasley, a Democrat running for Senate. Miss Beasley is running against Representative Ted Budd, a Republican, in a race for an open seat that is important for determining control of the Senate. Now, it's interesting. I want you to understand the way it typically works. And one of the reasons why the United States of America is a capitalist society is capitalism is most aligned with freedom, right? If you vote with your money, people tend to be neutral when it comes to money, right? No one's prejudiced against the color green. Everybody loves green. So if you have money to be the arbiter, these television stations, they're in the business of broadcasting, sending out information. The Republican National Committee, or the Republican, I think it's the Republican Senate Committee here, is running these ads, but it doesn't matter. They're in the business of trying to get Republicans elected. So they go to an outlet that advertises and puts out information, and there's an exchange. There's a willing buyer, a willing seller, and they put out this ad. All right, now think about this. Why would the television station, local television, why would they care? What if the ad ran complete falsehoods that said that Sherry Beasley, right? Well, actually, if it ran complete falsehoods, not only could the people who ran the ad could be sued, the television station could be sued, but if it ran complete falsehoods, they wouldn't do that. I mean, when was the last time you heard of anybody saying, here's an ad that's not just misleading, but it's an outright falsehood or something that's defamatory? You haven't, right? So they're not worried about that. They're not worried about the ad being potentially against the law. Why would they worry about its clarity or how honest it is, right? They wouldn't. And until now in the Trump era, you sort of saw that working out, right? Television stations were like, hey, they paid for the ad, we're going to run the ad. Again, let's scroll down the story. Television stations in North Carolina made the unusual decision, again, he admits it's unusual, on Friday to take down an attack ad against Sherry Beasley, a Democrat Senate candidate, after complaints that the ad falsely accused Miss Beasley of freeing a man convicted on charges of possessing lewd images of children when she served as Chief Justice of the North Carolina Supreme Court. The ad, made by the Republican Senate campaign arm, highlighted the case of a child porn offender, and it accused Miss Beasley of having voted to set him free. A female narrative spoke ominously over images of a young girl and jail bars sliding open. On Thursday, 2 Charlotte stations took the ad off the air. A representative for the stations, WXAN and WSCO, explained in an email to Ms. Wiseman that the ad's claim about Ms. Beasley is an error, and it appears the defendant was not set free by the Supreme Court decision. Now, I skipped a paragraph. I want to go back, and that's what the TV stations, that's what they did. Why did they do it? Well, earlier, apparently, 5 TV stations in Raleigh and Charlotte said they would pull the ad or that they had paused it pending an examination of its claims, according to emails from the stations to Courtney Wiseman, a lawyer working for the Democrat Senatorial Committee, which were reviewed by the New York Times. So why did they take that step? They took that step because a lawyer, right, Courtney Wiseman, working for the Democrat Senatorial Campaign Committee, complained about the ads. She went to 5 stations in Raleigh and Charlotte and said, hey, we don't like this ad, even though you've been paid, right? We don't like it. And these TV stations that are apparently run by leftists decided, you know what, we're going to pull it because we think it's misleading. Now, you heard the claims. The claims in the ad are that she, quote unquote, voted to set him free, voted to set free a child porn offender. Now, the stations say we're going to pause it or take it off the air, right? Because it appears that the defendant was not set free. Now, if you scroll down, as you know, Great American Mail, I always read the whole thing, right? So I read the whole thing. Right, here we go. So it turns out the case that led to the removal of the North Carolina ad involved a man named James Howard Terrell Jr., who was convicted in 2016 of possessing lewd images of minors on a computer thumb drive. An appeals court ruled that a detective had conducted an illegal search of the thumb drive in violation of Mr. Terrell's Fourth Amendment rights. Search and seizure, can't do that. Fruit of the poisonous tree, the evidence is excluded. I got no problem with any of that as a civil libertarian. In fact, I support that. Got no problem with that. And it sent the case back down to the trial court. In 2019, the state Supreme Court, with Miss Beasley in the majority, also the Chief Justice, upheld that ruling. As of May 2020, Mr. Terrell was still in prison, according to court records. And it was on that basis that Miss Wiseman, the Democrat lawyer, demanded the ad be taken down. To claim her vote somehow resulted in the defendant being set free is false. Again, I'll read that again. To claim that her vote somehow resulted in a defendant being, quote, set free is false. Interestingly, because, as it turns out, a lawyer for the Republican campaign arm in a letter to TV stations about the ad argued the North Carolina court records for Mr. Terrell state that his convictions were, quote, vacated after the Supreme Court heard the case. The lawyer, Ryan G. Dollar, accused the Democrat lawyer of attempting to gaslight TV station managers. Here we go. Last sentence. Court records indicate that Mr. Terrell is no longer incarcerated. So, in fact, he was, in part, set free by the actions of the former Chief Justice of the North Carolina Supreme Court. That would be Miss Beasley. So the ad is not false in any way. Here are the 2 problems, folks. First and foremost, why is it that TV stations who are in the business of raising money through ad revenues, why is it their problem? If you don't like the ad, if you think it's illegal, sue the people that did it. Don't go to the middle person, right? Well, you know why. Because leftists can't win in the marketplace of ideas, so they just got to shut you down. And the reason I highlighted this story and wanted you to know about this story is this is the first time I've ever seen this. You've got TV stations now basically throwing in, and they're going to further try to rig the election in November of 2022 by doing this kind of stuff, going, hey, this ad is arguably not misleading or arguably false. Well, it wasn't even false. It really wasn't even misleading. But why shouldn't this be for politics? Why aren't we able to hear the information? And you need to understand how bad this is, because now television stations are willing to do this even at losing their own ad revenue. Anyway, those are the biggest stories of the day right now. You're now all caught up on the news of the day. And if you like this, please subscribe, tell a friend, tell lots of friends, give us a review or comment. If you want to email me, you can email me at publius@gamcast.net, Publius. If you want to follow me on Twitter, I have a link tree in the description, or all the different places you can follow me. But if on Twitter, it's @mail_American. Remember, it's MAIL, not MALE. And if you like the show, I hope you tune back in tomorrow.